Well, hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming to have some tea with me again today. I am so incredibly happy today because I'm getting to speak with someone who represents an organization that I have a lot of love for, especially the amazing work that they do in our riding. So I want to welcome Jacqueline from the Wounded Warriors. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Really means a lot.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to introduce you and then I'm going to ask you questions. So, everybody out there listening in, Jacqueline was born and raised in North Vancouver, British Columbia, and is a full time reserve officer with the Cadet Instructor Cadre, working with the program in various capacities since 1998. She first became involved with Wounded Warriors Canada by signing up for the battlefield bike ride to Italy in 2016. Unfortunately, in November 2015, she was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer and underwent surgery, chemotherapy, radiation, and hormone treatments, and was not well enough to attend the ride. The efforts of Wounded Warriors Canada became much more meaningful as she fought through treatments and her own trauma, fueling her desire to give back and to help others. The determination came to light when she was selected as one of the 7 runners for the Wounded Warrior Run BC in 2017, a month prior to completing active cancer treatments. Jacqueline found redemption by completing the battlefield bike rides in 2017 and 2018 and has been the ride director since 2019. Jacqueline was then re-diagnosed with breast cancer in late 2019, resulting in a full mastectomy and another year of chemotherapy treatments. The ongoing parallel between her own medical battle and the unwavering commitment to support our veterans, first responders, and their families struggling with operational stress injuries has allowed her to thrive. Jacqueline lives in Victoria with her incredible 12-year-old daughter, Haley. Well, thank you, Jacqueline, and thank you for sharing that incredibly powerful story. It is so important because so many people face these kind of challenges, and sometimes we have no idea that they're facing them. And, it's hard, and sometimes it also gives you a direction and a force that you may have not had before. So I just want to thank you so much for sharing that important part of your story. So I invited you here today because I really appreciate the work that Wounded Warriors does, but also because, as you know, I'm the veteran spokesperson for the NDP. And I spend a great deal of my time working with veterans in our riding, but across Canada. And recently in our committee, we just did a study, the Standing Committee of Parliament on Veterans Affairs. We recently did a study on the caregivers of veterans. And it is continually appalling to me how many families and loved ones are struggling because the veteran that they are with, or in what the Wounded Warriors does with a first responder, are struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and what that does for the whole family. And I still don't think it's recognized to the level that it should be. So I will be asking you a question about that committee report a little bit later. But first of all, I just want you to tell us a little bit about Wounded Warriors and the important work that they do.
Okay. Thank you so much. That was an incredible introduction. Um, yeah, so you definitely brought up a few important features of Wounded Warriors Canada that we support veterans, first responders, and their families. And I think the biggest thing that we accomplish is that it's not an individual's issue, it's the entire support network of that person, which is not only their family, but also their occupation. So, Wounded Warriors has developed and created a robust system over, many years that provides that support at every level. So, it starts with before operational stress and provides training and information for their occupations that people can be aware of what are the triggers for something that could create an operational stress injury and what are the things you can do about it. Now, of course, there are many people that are currently, suffering with one of those operational stress injuries. So there is individual programming There's also programming for a spouse because that person is going to be able to thrive so much more if there is two people working towards the solution rather than just one. And there's also a kids warrior program because we know that children can also be affected by somebody who is struggling with that injury. And all the way to canine therapy to help somebody thrive throughout their life and have that ongoing support. So I think the biggest mission of Wounded Warriors Canada is supporting that individual in all facets, that they're not alone. It isn't something that they're choosing to be struggling with, that it's an inevitable portion of whatever occupation somebody is in. And so we need to help them and support them through the whole process to allow them to thrive, regardless of those risks of their occupation.
Well, thank you. That is so important. And I know that usually Wounded Warriors does a run from Port Hardy to Victoria to raise funds for veterans and emergency responders to address the realities around post-traumatic stress. And I just think that's so incredible. And it's amazing to watch the people run. Like that camaraderie and watching people see them move from community to community. I'm just wondering if you could tell us a bit about the run and what programs you raise funds for when that work is done.
Yeah, so the run was born by two people in the military who there had been a rash of suicides in 2006, and these two serving members, just felt like they needed to do something, that doing something was better than doing nothing, is what one of them had said. And so they were both athletes, they were both runners, and they wanted to use that as a way to reach communities across Vancouver Island. So
Mhm.
they started in Port Hardy and they just started running down the highway. There was only four of them at the beginning. They kind of thought, we'll raise some money and give it to Wounded Warriors Canada. Of course, it's evolved over the years, and now we're going into year 8, I believe. And every year the mission gets stronger, where we come into a community and we just see that hope on everyone's face that somebody is finally here doing something. And so our team now consists of 7 runners. We try to represent veterans, first responders, civilians, military spouse, all of the different areas. But they're just people like all of us who want to help and happen to use running as their method of, you know, working through stress or keeping healthy, that kind of thing. Um, and they all have stories that are their own issues with mental health, or witnessing it through a spouse or through a coworker. So it's truly magical to enter into community by community, intimately. Pre-COVID, we were able to run into a legion and embrace the people standing there, and hear their stories, share our stories, and have a common mission to help everybody else in the community. So over the years, we have raised funds for Wounded Warriors Canada, and those dollar amounts come back to Vancouver Island tenfold. So for every dollar that's coming in from somebody here, $10 is coming back by the amount of programming that we provide. A lot of the initial programs that come out of Wounded Warriors Canada happen here on Vancouver Island, so that's really special too. Um, this year, regardless of the run happening or not, there's a brand new program that was run just a month ago called the Surviving Spousal Program, for a person who survives their spouse passing away in the line of duty or by suicide. And those people typically are kind of left to deal with everything on their own. Well, not anymore. So if people are wondering where do those funds go and who are we helping, we're helping the people right here on the island.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's incredibly important to make space to have these conversations that people are struggling. They're struggling with a lot of important pain that they're carrying, and that there's families struggling because their loved one has died by suicide. And that has a profound impact on the family and the community around them, and that sense of isolation is so overwhelming, and it's important that these programs are put into place with people who understand, who know how to deal with these things, so that people aren't left alone. So
Mhm.
I'm just, thank you for that. And I know that this year I was personally sad when the run could not happen. I know you guys changed the dates, and every time you gave an update, I was sharing it on social media, because I know people in this region, we're just used to it happening once a year. I am always sad when you guys are running through and I'm in Ottawa. So, I just was really sad when finally COVID, and of course, COVID has had such an impact on all of our families, communities, and our individual mental health, I think, in my opinion. But you have to be safe. So I'm just wondering, can you tell us a little bit about how hard it must have been to make that decision, and what it meant for those people that participate in some cases annually?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, as the director of the run, my initial reaction to COVID, which actually was interesting timing for us in 2020, because we did manage to have a very successful, the most successful run we've ever had. We raised $190,000 that
Wow.
year. Prior to the run, we had a gala dinner. We did a 1 day event where we ran from Souk to Sydney for the very first time ever, and we got to connect even more communities. And then we did our run from Port Hardy to Victoria, where we now also stop in Port Alberni, and it was incredible. We came out of that run when I think maybe 10 days later is when everything shut down from COVID. So we felt very fortunate that we managed somehow to come out of that unscathed, and had no idea that 1 year later we would still be in the same situation and would end up canceling. So my initial kind of reaction to the team was like, don't worry, no matter what, we're doing this, that nothing will stop us. And that's sort of what I went by for quite a while, until we got closer and closer and the reality set in. And, where I went from saying, like, no matter what, we're doing this, I realized no matter what, we're leaders,
Mhm.
and we have to show that leadership and that strength, and tell everybody it's okay if the priority is to take care of one another's health. And so we, our team consists of paramedics who are treating COVID patients, and lots of people who are in situations where we do not want to make the issue worse. We are certainly not going to contribute to the problem, and we need to show everyone that an event is an event. Actually, we even tried to call it an experience so that it wouldn't be classed as an event. We tried everything. But regardless of it being an experience or an event, you know what? The mission doesn't change if we can run down the highway or not. It does not change the need. And it might be harder for us to physically connect with people, but it certainly did not change how much people were acknowledging what we're doing,
Mhm.
still reaching out to us. So we tried to change the event. We thought maybe if we change it to April, that will give us enough time. But as we all know, time is a weird thing with COVID. And when you think you have a lot of time, suddenly nothing, no time at all has gone by and everything is the same. But we still raised funds. We still did some running in our own communities. We still reached out to as many members as we could in communities. I'm still receiving checks,
Mm.
and we've raised almost $94,000,
Wow.
which is incredible. So, um, it parallels my cancer journey in a lot of ways, where when I did chemo for 14 months the first time, you think you're never going to get through this. Like, this is impossible. And when you start to get close to the end, you realize that you're actually starting to grieve what has now become normal, and you are worried about it being over. You don't want it to be over, which is a very strange thing for your brain to go through, because you've been hoping and wishing for this thing to be over. But there is always some sort of comfort in routine. And
Mhm.
um, if I've learned anything through this, through that experience, is that we can thrive anyways, no matter what is thrown at us. And I think the communities are resilient. And I also think that it's provided an opportunity for everybody to see the same problem, that we have these frontline employees, we have these veterans who are suffering, and now we all have a taste of it, and we all know how much more important it is. So there has to be a good out of this bad experience, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciate what you said about being a leader, and sometimes that means making these hard decisions, and I respect that tremendously.
Mhm.
I have participated in greeting a few of these groups in the past.
Mhm.
It's amazing to see how the communities greet the runners. I absolutely love that. And I remember one year I was able to greet them in Campbell River and then promise them that I would drive to Comox and greet them there at the 888 Legion as well. And it was really fun, I have to admit, because everybody had just seen me and then they saw me again. So I got a lot of excitement and love, and it was beautiful. And I was really grateful. But I remember a moment for me where I really reflected because I was driving to Comox. I had a couple other meetings planned in between the time, and I was behind the runners. And slowly we were sort of lined up. There was a lot of traffic lined up, and whenever it was available, somebody would go around, and then we kept moving, and it was really slow. And I was thinking about how these folks have put aside time to make aspects of our life better. These people that were running had actively done things in their life that made their lives harder, slower, sometimes more frustrating, and they did that to keep us safe. So I was thinking driving there that we have to slow down behind them and let them have this moment to remind us of that. And I felt really humbled by the work the veterans, the frontline responders, and all the loved ones that were there caring for them and running with them. I just felt so much gratitude. And I'm just wondering, do you have any stories of love or appreciation that these folks have experienced by participating in the run?
Yeah, that's a big question. Most people organize an event in one or two communities, and we organize an event over 7 days in every community. So we have an experience like that every couple of hours, to be honest. And it's so different from location to location on how we know people and how we interact, and we've really become a part of those communities. I think WAS probably comes to mind first. Some people don't even probably know where that is, but it's a very tiny community, just north of Sayward on the upper island, North Island. And those people have been through so much trauma over the years, and they are incredibly resilient. And there's one guy there in particular who has kind of been the champion for organizing the event when we come in. And when we first met him, he was so shy he wouldn't speak out loud. And now, through our relationship and encouragement, and being, seeing all of us be vulnerable, um, he speaks in front of the group now and does an entire speech for us when we come in. And I mean, this is somebody who would not move himself to the center of the room, and now is, overcoming some of that. And just the people in that town who have gone through so much, each one of them has a story, but per capita, they raise the most amount of money for us, because they just, no matter what, they're still going to help. and they need the help, but they still turn around and provide our hotel rooms for free, and they cook meals for us. And it's incredible. um and like I said, that these stories happen every single place that we go. We went into a Legion in Ladysmith once, and there was a veteran. I'm guessing he was in his 80s, and he just broke down and
Mhm.
said, in the entirety of his life, he has never spoken about the trauma that's happened to him in the military until that moment about 3 years ago. I mean, you can't. This is why we have to do this. We have to show people it's okay, and it's never too late to do that. So, you know, uh, there's another experience when I remember coming to the finish line in Victoria, and we typically have a large group of first responders and veterans that run with us in uniform for the last 1.5 kilometers, just to kind of show this like powerful group of people running down the street. And there was a paramedic with us, and at the end he came up to me and he just shook my hand and he just broke down and he said, I'm losing everything. I'm losing my family. I'm losing my wife, everybody, and I don't know what to do, and this is the first time I'm saying I need help. And so, from there we can funnel him into the right direction. So it's just a safe place for people to be who they truly are and step forward out of the darkness to get some help.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's incredibly important because I remember at one of these events, an RCMP officer took me aside and he thanked me for caring about post traumatic stress disorder. I did not expect that at all. And he just said, like, so many of us that are in uniform experience this. And he was this big, strong looking man. But as he spoke, he began to cry. And it was a really powerful moment for me to consider what it feels like to be seen. And what the story you just told, I think that's really important, to be seen by one another. But these people that put on uniforms where it's like you have to be tough, to remind them that no, you don't. I think actually it will make you better at your job. um, and it's important that we understand the realities of post-traumatic stress disorder and the need for mental health supports, and for them to be easier for people to talk about and to ask for. So can you just tell us a bit about what Wounded Warriors is doing to help with that, and what can we do to help?
Yeah, so you know, there is a roster of programming that an individual, doesn't matter if you're a veteran or first responder, or their families. You can go and check out those programs on woundedwarriors.ca. And there's a variety of programs depending on what stage that person is at for assistance. So I mentioned earlier, there's, individual group-based therapies. There are spousal options, cope couples overcoming PTSD every day. The Kids Warrior program. Recently, there's a there's also a spousal resiliency program, so that's specifically just for the spouse, and that's so important. There's actually people who can have their own trauma from dealing with somebody with trauma, so it can be sort of that cycle. So I think there's multiple layers to what can be done. So there are individual sides that a person go to, and then there are also the occupational sides. So
Mhm.
we have been signing partnership agreements with fire stations, police stations, ambulance paramedics of BC, and this allows, like we were speaking about earlier, with the leadership to step up and show their people that it's okay. And the intention is that they would then funnel the information to all of the employees to have better access to the programming.
Mhm.
So we really, there really are every angle that we're trying to attack here. As far as support, the primary thing that we do with the run is fundraising, because we know that raising funds allows for more programming to happen.
Mhm.
And the more that we spread the word and we make it okay to talk about, the more people are going to step forward. And what we really want, and maybe a personal mission, is that if somebody's going to step forward, you want to catch them right away and be able to help them. You don't want to say, okay, but you're going to be on a wait list for a year.
Yeah.
So the more funds that we can raise, the more programming we can put together. So there's any layer of things to help. One, be a part of the conversation, make it okay to talk about mental health and struggles, admit your own struggles. Two, help with raising funds and helping people get to that information on our website, and then people can sign up, and it's completely like nobody's gonna, it's anonymous in the sense that they can just have a conversation with somebody at Wounded Warriors and decide what might be right for them.
Right.
There's no commitment in that way.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I spoke earlier about the committee work that I'm doing virtually in Ottawa. And we are currently working on finalizing the report on caregivers. And just so the everyone in the constituency knows, when that comes out, I'll be happy to share that on social media so that you can take a look at it. But this is, we're doing this study, or finished up this study, and it was not a surprise to me. It's heart-wrenching to hear the stories, but I've heard them repeatedly, and that also makes me a bit frustrated that families, loved ones, because caregivers can be a parent, it can be the person that is a dear friend that comes and helps you, and it can be your spouse, it can be your brother. It's a lot of folks that are working really hard to support people who are struggling. And I've heard a lot of stories about families, loved ones who are supporting a person who has post traumatic stress disorder, who has reaction to things that can be very nuanced in some cases, and it's stressful. And, I remember, one mother telling me it's things like making sure that the kids don't play their games that are war games on the computer or on their machine loudly, and getting the kids that come to visit them to understand they have to keep it down, because if dad hears that, he might drop to the ground immediately. Like, it's profound what's happening, and it's very overwhelming, and they're expected to support their loved one with little to no training at all. And I think that's a really important thing for all of us to think about, is they are dealing with challenges and issues as loved ones that experts are still struggling to figure out how to deal with the best way. So I'm just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what Wounded Warriors does, and you've talked about it a lot, but specifically to really support families and loved ones of folks that are experiencing this.
Yeah. So, the piece about training, how is a spouse or a family member supposed to have the training to deal with that? We do have, I think it's over 100 clinicians in Canada now that are specifically trained to provide our programs. Um, and yeah, so a couple of them, couples overcoming PTSD every day, is an option for the partnership to work together and address some of those things, because the one person might be walking on eggshells while the other person is, who knows what the trigger is. The triggers can be very different for different people,
Mhm.
depending on the situation. So couples really thrive after that experience where they get to both equally be a part of the solution, where maybe the couple, the person struggling, can't feel safe saying everything they want to say, and the spouse doesn't always feel safe saying everything they're frustrated by, so it gives them that avenue. And they're actually followed, I think it's about 9 months after the program, where they check in. So it's not just the intensive part of it, it's like an ongoing support system. As well, new to the table is the spousal resiliency program, and allowing that person to get together in a group base with other spouses that are experiencing the same thing. And it's powerful to sit with somebody and say, you feel the way I do. That's amazing. So that's been incredible. And then recently, like I said, we had a program earlier that was for surviving spouses who are left now with this legacy of trauma, to help them. So yeah, I think it's really well rounded at this point for everyone in the family to have that support.
Well, I'm definitely going to work on the Veterans Affairs side because there's a lot of challenges there that need to be addressed. So we're almost done. Two more questions. The next question is just what do you feel is the most important thing for all Canadians to know about wounded warriors?
Um, the most important thing is that there is a large group of people that want to help, and
Mm.
that there is nobody is alone. There is support for what you're going through, and what you're going through somebody else is going through, and you don't, need to suffer in silence. That we're not going to give up our mission. You're not going to be left out. I think that the other big piece is you also have to advocate for yourself. You need to step forward and you need to make that decision to get the help that is out there and available to you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. So the last question is a little bit more personal, and I try to make sure that at the end we close with something a little more light and fun and remind us that we're all human. And I know that you got your tea, which is from Stonehouse Tea, the Campbell River tea, and you said it was good. So I'm really glad that you got that. So knowing that you received that tea, can you tell us what your favorite beverage is? It doesn't have to be tea.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I have three favorite beverages that I interchange in a day. I love my vanilla lattes that I make at home. Um, and I drink a lot of tea. In fact, I only drink black tea really. So that was a very nice surprise to receive this tea, which I'm enjoying, and it's delicious. And I do have a soft spot for wine as well.
Well, I am a black tea drinker. I drink it all the time, and I'm very relieved that I don't have a reaction to caffeine because if I did, I'd probably never sleep. So, could you tell us one of your favorite books or movies?
So this is a bit nerdy. My favorite movie of all time is Top Gun. I'm in the Air Force, so I don't always admit that to everybody.
Well, now you've admitted it to everyone who's not only watching but will watch in the future.
Another product of the pandemic, there was supposed to be a sequel to Top Gun that was supposed to come out in 2020, and we're still waiting. So
Oh, well, hopefully we'll get COVID done with soon so that we can get on to the good movies.
um, this one is also going to sound nerdy, but I'm really into DIY finances. So I absolutely love my Investing for Dummies book.
Fantastic. And the last question we have for you today is why do you love where you live?
Oh, I love where I live. It's the island. There's an island vibe. Um, I love the weather. I love that my daughter loves it here. Um, I love the ocean. I I love that we can run down the island for the Wounded Warrior Run, and that's one of the most magical things I've ever been able to do. So there's just, you can't recreate that event anywhere else. It's because of all of the things that the island is, that
Mm.
make that happen. So yeah, I love it all.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. And to all of our folks, next week I will be doing another one. This next Tea Talk will actually be with the CEO of the Comox Airport. And of course, Mike Atkins is also the previous wing commander at our 19 wing there in Comox. So I'm really looking forward to chat with him about the realities that airports have faced during COVID-19 and some other important things. So thank you again, Jacqueline, for coming. And I appreciate you taking the time and sharing these important stories.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have to say, you're an incredible advocate for our veterans and first responders. And, it's so appreciated when the leadership stands up and does the right thing. And you're helping so many people. So
Well,
I
thank you.
can't thank you enough for that.
Well, thank you, because I know you're working hard as well. We all work together, and we must always, especially during these times, thank the folks that are our first responders, including our military, who during this time have done from just tremendous, phenomenal work. And if it wasn't for them, we would be a lot less safe. So thank you, everyone, and I'll see you again next week.